So let's hear from Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited that I promote the Rumble. I don't think I've ever done that before. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Excellent. I'm going to read an excerpt from one of my short stories titled My Daddy. This is the end of the story. So to understand what's happening, you need to know that the protagonist, Nellie, is looking back on the time period right after her mother died, when she was in her early 20s. Her very needy father, who owns a store in her hometown of Manorville, and who was born with one leg shorter than the other, has tried all kinds of tricks to get her to leave her job and move back home to take care of him. Nellie keeps resisting. Just before this excerpt begins, he's gone to the hospital for what might be a heart attack. The other thing you need to know is that earlier in the story, Nellie's daddy finally told her the ending of his obscene story about the Rogers donkey, which her mama had kept him from telling her all these years. When I got to the hospital and found Daddy's room, he was laying on the bed. He looked for all the world like a visitor who'd just gotten really tired. There was no IV or pulse monitor. He didn't even have a gown on. And I noticed that my Aunt Dottie was nowhere to be found. I checked my watch. It was just after 4 p.m., time for her stories to be on. That explained that. Is Aunt Dottie down in the TV lounge? I asked Daddy. He rolled his head to look at me and shrugged. I don't know, Nellie. You know I can only take her for so long. Why did you call me? I asked him. He shrugged again. How are you feeling? I said, and sat down in the plastic chair next to the bed. I had a feeling it would be a while until I could cajole him to get up and out of the room. He shrugged again. They said it wasn't a heart attack. Uh-huh, I said. Just gas, probably. Needed a fart. Well, that's nice, thank you. I probably didn't really need to come in at all, he said. That sounded like he thought about his actions, which confused me. I waited. You can see the store from here, he said, and pointed out the window down Main Street, which runs parallel to the street the hospital is on, called, fittingly, Hospital Drive. We are a simple people here in Manorville. Your mama and I met there, he continued, his voice taking on the meditative tone that signaled that stories were going to be unspooled. I leaned back in the chair and tried to push out of my mind all of the things that I could be doing. My ex-boyfriend Heck used to complain that I was too impatient, and I probably was. But then again, Heck himself got a little glassy-eyed after he had heard some of Daddy's stories for the 19th time. I remember the first thing your mama and I ever talked about, Daddy said. Uh-huh, I said. He said, I was looking in town for something, can't remember what now, and I was walking along with my limp, you know. Uh-huh. And most of the people just ignored me when I walked by, except for little kids who might ask somebody what was wrong with me. But at the store, when I walked in, your mother was working there, and she came around the counter and she said to me, what do you need, Nelson? Just like that. What do you need, Nelson? I didn't even know she knew my name. She was a grade lower than me in school, you know. So I said, a soda pop? And she went off to get it for me, just left the cash register and everything to do it. Her father was back behind the manager's office window, and I remember that when I looked over at him, he just turned his newspaper to another page. I remember it was real quiet in the store, just the hum of the refrigerator cases and the whirring of a fan. And I remember that I stood there for so long, waiting, that I finally started to worry, wondering why she didn't come back. I was staring at Daddy at that point, because I'd never heard this part of the story before. It had always been hewn down to a simpler tale about buying a soda and asking Mama to the big dance at the high school. And finally, your Mama came back with 2 soda pops, and I said to her, you were gone a long time. And she said, well, I was trying to decide if I was brave enough. Brave enough for what? I said. To ask you to the dance, she said. What did you decide? I said. I'm not brave enough, she said. I saw the tears were beginning to run down Daddy's face now as he went on. "Oh," I said to her, just like that. "Oh." And we stood there with our open coats until finally she said, "But maybe you're brave enough to ask me?" Daddy kept on looking out the window with his tears wetting his collar. I felt them start to prickle in the backs of my eyes too, and I blinked a couple of times. "And then I was," Daddy said to the window. "I was brave enough." Well, I waited in the hallway for Dr. Russell to finish one more examination of Daddy, having bit my tongue to keep from saying there's really no need at all. I thought again about the Rogers donkey, or more specifically, that the only thing I knew about the Rogers was their donkey. Did the nursing school ever visit the farm? What happened to Harry? Miss Susan, single lady who enjoyed the donkey's arousal so much, did she run off to Morocco and become a high-class prostitute? Even though I knew the entire anecdote now, I didn't know the whole story. And then I remembered that Heck had heard it before I had. Daddy had told it to him after dinner one night, when the gentleman had retired to the living room, and Mama made me stay in the kitchen with her and help with the dishes. I didn't mind doing the dishes so much, but it galled me, this old-fashioned convention of the important manly men needing to rest themselves after a hard day of labor, when my mother had not only put in a full day at the library, but had prepared and served a delicious meal afterwards while Daddy sat around the store. I had flounced around the kitchen, grumbling, until I ended up slouched by the doorway, eavesdropping on the men. "Mama," I'd said, "Daddy is telling the donkey story." Mama didn't break her motion, hands in soapy water, yanking up plates I was supposed to be drying. "Mama, aren't you going to stop him?" Mama just said, "I think the glasses can be dried now, Nellie." "Mama!" She didn't turn around. "Then go on in and listen to it, Nellie, if you're such the grown woman now." Of course I didn't. Later, as Heck and I strolled down Main Street to the ice cream stand by the ball fields, I told him about it, apologizing for the story and wanting him to be angry on my behalf. "It was a funny story," he said. "Well, I wouldn't know," I said. "Do you want me to tell you?" "No." "Look, maybe your dad is as lazy as you say, but he tells a good story." "Does that qualify him for sainthood?" I snapped. "No, I'm just saying there are worse qualities to have in a spouse." We walked on. I fumed, Heck pondered. After a pause, he said, "Your parents really love each other." "I guess so," I said. "I'm not sure why." He didn't look over at me as he replied, "Because they want to." I'd forgotten that until that day in the hospital with Daddy. I haven't forgotten it since. Dr. Russell came out to shake my hand and assure me that nothing much was wrong and insurance I already had a firm grip on. Then Daddy came out of the room without his jacket and I sent him back for it. He reemerged limping, looking tired but somehow less agitated. "Your mama always said she'd never lose me," he said with a slight smile. "She'd just follow the trail of dropped possession I created and there I'd be." In his voice I heard what he'd lost. The one person who would find his lack of competency to be endearing. "That's one good thing about you not being married, Nellie. You have time to help me out," he said. "Let's not send you back to the store today, Daddy," I said. No, he said. "Scott can handle it. He's a good boy." He started to shuffle down the hallway, but I grabbed his arm. "Daddy, I can't move back home with you," I said. "I'm a grown woman. I have a life of my own. I'm sorry, but I can't." Daddy sighed and said, "Where's my cane? Did I bring it?" He leaned back into the room. "Daddy," I said, "did you hear what I said?" He said, head still in the room. He popped it back out. "I heard you. I guess I didn't bring it." There was a small pause as he looked around for the cane, and I said, "How about I give you my arm, Daddy?" "Well, thank you, Nellie. You're a rock-solid young woman, you know." "Gee, thanks a lot." Nothing, Daddy. Let's just get you home." He told me 4 more news stories that day. I only wanted to punch him once. And we ate the rest of Aunt Dottie's lasagna heated up in the oven the way Mama would have done it for supper. Then Daddy went on up to bed, and I was going to go home, but instead I found myself sitting on their porch rocking in Mama's chair. A couple of neighbors walked by, out strolling in the gloaming. "Oh, you gave me a scare there, Nellie," one called. "I thought you were your mama." I'm not, I called back. Oh, no, sorry. The word just kind of hung there in the night, like a benediction maybe, or a promise, or just an acknowledgement that things wouldn't be like they ever were again. Daddy went on back to the store the day after his heart attack scare and managed to string his 7-hour stay in the hospital into a half-dozen new stories to tell the folks who came in over the next few months. This ended up including a woman in her late 50s named Maureen, who was new to Manorville after inheriting her mother's old farmhouse just outside of town. Maureen reeked of vigor and decision. Daddy married her about a year after Mama died. And though I felt a little bitter, I had to admit that it was a big relief to have someone else take over the care and feeding. Maureen never did ask me why I wasn't married myself, but often gave me compliments about my competency and work ethic, singing in me a kindred spirit. She's a striver, just like her mama, Daddy would agree. I think that both Maureen and I felt the same way about marriage, which is that one of the people involved really needs to need the other person, and the other person really needs to be needed. That was certainly the way it worked for Daddy, and quite probably why it hasn't worked out for me. These days, when I drive home from Maureen and Daddy's on a Sunday evening, just after I come up over the hill on my way out of Manorville, I catch a glimpse in the rearview mirror and see how the town looks like a toy village. The little white houses, a few churches, Daddy's store, and even the hospital up on the hill. I'm always surprised that it's so pretty, making me forget whatever I was thinking about just then. I always want to tell someone in the passenger seat to turn around and look back at it, to see it for both of us. I'm not sure who that someone is supposed to be. It might be Heck, I guess, or Mama, or even Daddy. But of course, there's no one next to me, so all I can do is steal little glimpses while I keep my foot on the gas and the car in the lane, straight ahead, until I merge onto the highway and head on home.